Valdez Jr. I descend not only from a soldier, soldado de Cuera, on the Portola expedition that went right through here, but on the same gentleman who was a courier on the Anza Expedition to California, or to Monterey. Today I want to take you on a journey around the Tulares. The Tulares are now known as the East Bay. And my talk and my presentation comes from the journals of Fray Pedro Font. You all have a copy of the Spanish diary that I got my sources from. As you can see, this is a map of our Bay Area that was drawn by Father Font when he got back to La Nueva España, which is now Mexico. He put this map together at Mission Tubutama in Sonora. And you can see Punta de Pinos, or Point of Pines, which is in Monterey today. And you can actually see an anchor there. That anchor is the ship San Carlos. We academics call it His Majesty's ship. But it's the ship belonging to the King of Spain. There's the San Carlos, who took all the belongings of the settlers from here to where they founded the Presidio. The people that started from here, going northwesterly through here, as you can see, Father Font's trail through here, going through here. Here you can see this tree. Who can guess what that tree looks like? Or what could that be in relation to the Bay Area that you would know? Palo Alto, the tall tree. Father Font had the mentality, the meticulous Font had the mentality to draw a tree that he saw. And later on we'll address El Palo Alto. You will find that I am very passionate in using the Spanish language because it gives that much credence not only to my talk, but to what my ancestors were writing as they were coming up north, as we say. From here they went to reconnoiter the peninsula, and they founded the Presidio right there. You can see where the Golden Gate should have been at, and Mission Dolores. From here you could see the Farallones, and right here, that's none other than San Pedro Point. Font was very, very meticulous. Haven't seen that? We'll then go to the focus of my talk this afternoon, which is the Tulares. As you can see there, the Tulares. You can see the East Bay. They then went from Palo Alto around La Ensenada de San Francisco, or as we know, the San Francisco Bay. They went around through here, went around, all through here, and you can see where they made a turn right through here to come down, right through there, and back to Monterey. This here is Suisun Bay, as we know it today. They called it back then El Rio Grande de San Francisco. It became the task of Father Font to disprove that this was a river. And I'm going to show you how he disproved it. Fages had wrote to the Viceroy to say that this was a river and that they should immediately come and establish not only a mission there, but people to settle, because it had fertile land and it had very good water. And they called it a river. I decided to show this map first because we're now going to superimpose that map in a map of today. This 20 or 21 soldiers from the Presidio in Monterey, they went towards the ocean, the harbor. They followed the sand dunes to about the vicinity of Seaside. Then they went to the northwest and went to cross in the vicinity of Monterey, right about right here. they crossed what they called Rio de Monterrey. That is now the Salinas River. By then, they had traveled about 4 leagues, or the equivalent to 10.5 miles. They then went from there to go camp in an area they called La Natividad. La Natividad is an area that, if you know Salinas a little bit, San Juan grade up there, you will find that a canyon opens up beautifully. You can't miss it if you're driving up there. And that's where they camped. Also, in 1846, the Battle of Natividad was fought there. And that's the history of that area where they camped. The following day, they continued going over the Gavilan Range. They crossed over into here. And in this vicinity, if you go over there today, you will find Mission San Juan Bautista. They camped approximately 100 yards from where they placed Mission San Juan Bautista. And if anybody here have visited Mission San Juan Bautista, you would see that the entrance of the mission is like so. To the right, you'll see the old Camino Real there. How many have seen that? There you go. That's the trail that they were following, an old Ohlone Indian trail. There, they went through there, and then they continued going through here, passing what we now know, the city of Gilroy. They crossed the Pajaro River, Gilroy, and then went to the area of Morgan Hill. From Morgan Hill, they continued from here, Morgan Hill, they continued following the canyon. This road that they were following today was an old Indian trail again, and it became known as Santa Teresa Boulevard. And if you go there now, it's still there. They continued up in this direction through South San Jose, through about Saratoga, Los Gatos, and went up north through about the area of Cupertino. They camped there for the night as well. By now, they had traveled about 80 miles in about 2.5 days. They camped there for the night. The following day, they came from here, went up to about a hill that's right here on Foothill Boulevard, where they climbed that hill. And from that hill, they could see the southern part of the bay. The following day, they decided to go up and went to the area by what is now the Palo Alto. And as you can see, there is the Palo Alto, and it's still there, 980 years old. So from here, they decided to go around the East Bay. Father Font is very, very clear here as to the reason as to why they went around. And that was to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that that water course that I mentioned before was not a river, but a gulf. The diaries never say what prompted them to think of that. It just says that's what they want to do. So they left Palo Alto. They followed approximately, according to my exploration, approximately the road that's Middlefield Road today, Alma and Central, right around that vicinity, all the way passing Moffett Field in that area to come in and camp at Rio, what they called Rio de la Virgen de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe. Today it's Guadalupe River by San Jose. They crossed it and they found 3 Indian villages on the other side. And this Native American, no sooner he saw this men and horse with lance and a gun or a rifle and a sword, he says these people were very, very scared and running around. I can imagine they were running crazy because they didn't know who they were. And he says, I got off my horse and I gave them glass beads and pacified them. And they did, and they camped that night there. They camped that night with him and everything was fine. But the Native American, the Indian, had never seen, supposedly, had never seen Europeans, or the mixture of Europeans, of Native American and Spaniards, which became the mestizo of the era. They had never seen this kind of people. And consequently, they were afraid, according to the diary. From here, then they went northerly and northeasterly to an area where you would go today and find Mission San Jose. And that's in the Fremont area, right up here. And you can see my trajectory of how I follow the route, pretty much compared to the map that you saw previously that Father Font did back in Sonora. Then they continue going through here, through the foothills of that range. Father Font calls it Las Faldas de los Cerros, meaning the foothills. Cerros is hills. Las Faldas, the foot. They use that term in Spanish because women would wear faldas up to about right here, and it's close to the foot. So then they went to camp in the vicinity of Hayward and San Lorenzo. There they camped at a creek they called Arroyo de la Harina. Today we know it as San Lorenzo Creek. There, as well, as they were getting close to the creek, they found a Native American hunting. And diary says that they surprised him. And as soon as this Indian saw this group of band of soldiers coming, he threw himself on the tall grass in the hopes that he would not be seen. But imagine riding a horse about this high and you're sitting on top. I mean, you're going to see everything in front of you. So they saw this Native American, and the guy was shaking on the ground, kicking and shaking his head, and Anza went to give him some beads, and he wouldn't take them. So Lieutenant Moraga got dismounted, got off his horse, and went and handed him the beads in his hand, and left him there. They then left him. Anza says in his journal, we had to leave him there because we thought he was going to die. He was shaking so bad. He was so afraid for whatever reasons. They camped there for the night. The following day, they continued going northerly, following the foothills. Father Font mentions that from around here, around the Berkeley area, they looked towards the bay, and they could see the opening of the Golden Gate. And the opening of the Golden Gate was a mile, approximately. 7/10 of the league in width. And when you go today with Google, or whichever way you want to measure it, the meticulous font is not that far off. It is exactly the width that he says with his estimation. So you have to give this priest credit for his, not only his writing abilities, but his knowledge of terrain and his estimation of what he saw. So consequently, they continue moving further up, going through El Cerrito, Richmond, San Pablo, all these areas. They came here to camp about a league, he says, from Rodeo. There they camped for the night. Nothing much said is that they could now see, from a little hill that they climbed here, they could see the Rio Grande de San Francisco. Okay? Nothing else was said on the diary. So, but when you come to here, where they camped, there's Rodeo, they camped a little south, there's a little creek there. Father Font says that the following morning, from here, they went a league and they found a band of Indians coming down. These Indians were all dressed up in what appeared to be their attire, feathers and whatnot, and blowing a flute and horns and making a lot of noise. And when they confronted him, the Indian chief said, sit down on the ground. So they sit down. And it is here that Father Font says, el comandante, the commander, yo, Font, the speaker, and el proveedor, the commissary. Here's where he mentions that they had an extra man with him, the commissary. Okay? And they sat in a circle and spoke, etc., with signs. And then the Indian chief got up and gave him a thread, un hilo, a thread of cacomines. Well, cacomines are plants that grew in that area at a specific point in time. And I can only envision that it was something like a bouquet, the way the diary speaks, and handed it to Anza. He recognized that Anza was the leader, probably because Anza was dressed differently or had a flag on his horse. We don't know for a fact, but when you read closely to the diaries, you can tell that they knew out of a group of people who the leader was, because they went direct to him. So there was something obvious that they could see that we don't know. But we can assume that his uniforms been a little different, or a flag indicating the flag of Spain, or something flying, or something like that. They continued going here. They arrived here at noon. And because it was cloudy, and they had to wait here till about noon to take a reading of the latitude. So they waited. From here, Father Font said that they climbed that hill, and he could see a piece of land, and he called it, looked like a tongue sticking out. And if you look at it today, there's your tongue. And he said it's not in front of La Bocana, that's what he called it. La Bocana comes from the word boca, mouth. This is the mouth of Suisun Bay. And he says, it was a little to the northwest. And if you throw your trajectory, true north is north-south, east-west. However, by the needle, it's about 13 degrees. It's about north, south, east, west. Not as you would think it is. So this is northwest. And he says the distance at the opening is about a quarter of a league. A quarter of a league translates to our distance of 0.6 of a mile. And if you throw Google, it is exactly 0.6 of a mile. They took that reading here, and about at noon, they decided to go on this range, going through Crockett in the area of Benicia today. And they followed this range through here, went through about Martinez, came down here through Pacheco, down to Pleasanton, and camped in an area. There they camped for the night as well. Then they came and camped. He called it Una Loma Pelada. The diary doesn't say which hill they climbed, but he calls it La Sierra Pelada. They continued going through Pittsburgh, all these little towns that are through here, to an area that they came to about what they called 20 varas from the shore. 20 varas from the shore is about 60 feet. That's where they arrived and camped for a while. This ridge right there is something that you would see if you would stand at Taco Bell and look at that direction. You'll see a little ridge which is quite wooded. A lot of trees, a lot of green vegetation on that side today. You stand at Taco Bell and look at it, and you see that ridge. That ridge looks exactly the same with those pine trees and whatever they are, savins and whatever. And he called it una sierra emboscada. Emboscada means heavily wooded area. It is here that from here they go to the proximity where they camped for that night, next door to what is now Antioch Bridge. Okay? There, they kept at the water's edge, and there was an Indian village there, Native American village. And why they chose 12 midnight, but at 12 midnight, Anza gave the order for Lieutenant Moraga and a mozo, a servant, to go with un palo, a stick of some sort, and put it as far as the water would come up on the beach. And they fixed, the diary says they plantaron, meaning plant. But the word plant as we know it today means something else. So I say fixed. They fixed a stake on the ground as far as the water would come at 12 midnight. Then they went to bed. The diary picks up the next day in the morning at 6 o'clock. It says, Moraga came back to the stick, to where the mozo was. It doesn't say the mozo, the servant, stayed there by the stick all night long. It doesn't say. It does say that Lieutenant Moraga came there and saw that the stick was there, but the water had receded about 15 varas. 15 varas is approximately 45 feet. So here, Father Flan, by reading the diary, you can say he was hitting his chest. I told you so, Viceroy. Those guys are lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. I'm the one. This is not a river, but a gulf. And then he says, and I'm going to prove it to you again. Because the water is receding, it comes up and down. So it's got to be part of the ocean, part of a gulf. So by then, Anza showed up 30 minutes later and got some sticks and threw them at the water. And they stood there, and about 10, 15 minutes later, the water brought the sticks back to him. And he says, aha! There's no possible way that this is a river, because in 15 minutes, this logs would have been 200 yards down, further down. It came back to me. So those were the two experiments that they did back then to prove a point. Nothing major, no rocket scientists. And that's how they arrived. So this area through here was a gulf. And this was called by them El Puerto Dulce because it had fresh water. Agua dulce rather than seawater, salt water, which Valle Redondo on this side had. They then continued from here, coming down to an area by Livermore. Here they camped for the night. From here is where Anza decided to come back to Monterey. He said the tulares are so bad here, we can't cross them. Because the delta and everything is there, we can't cross them. So they camped here for the night, and the following morning they came up all the way up to here, to an area where the Coyote River, which they were following, makes a turn right here. Right here, and Nunatito, they call it, a little height. Coyote Creek comes up this way, and then comes and empties. Right about right here. There they camped for the night, and from here, as you can see, they went through a canyon all the way to an area that if you go there today, you'll find San Felipe Lake. And it's on the Pacheco Pass Road. They exited in that cañada. It's very, if you stand on that lake and look in that direction, you'll see the opening that they came through. And they stopped at that lake, and Father Flan, for the first time, shows how sarcastic he could be, as he says that the Indians gave him some fish, but it was not enough. But the way it's written, you see, he could have been very sarcastic, you know. Then they decided to come back. From here they went like this and picked up the road that they had left in Monterey. And here they picked it up and went back home to the Presidio de San Carlos de Monterey.
So did he see the opening to the Golden Gate? also when he went up towards San Francisco? Do we know that or not?
Anza claimed that he was the first white man to ever saw the Golden Gate. And he fixed the cross at what's now Fort Point, or El Cantil Blanco that they call it, because that mesa went all the way down to the water. The U.S. government in 1946, I believe, don't take that number, 46, 58, something like that, cut it and put Fort Point. Later, they put the foundation of the Golden Gate Bridge there. There, at one time, Anza fixed a cross there. And underneath the cross, he put a note for Spaniards coming with their ships to look at the foot of that cross for information. So he saw the entry to what we now know the Golden Gate. He, Font, and others. As a matter of fact, Father Font writes in his journal a very, very, we call it, love letter to San Francisco. I don't know if you ever heard it, but he says, paraphrasing, this is a marvel of nature. I have been through all my travels, I have been through many lands, but I have never seen country as beautiful as this. Would they found a city like the ones in Europe, this would be the most beautiful city in the world. And it became to be San Francisco. So the man he was visionary. He had a vision, even back then. So Anza saw the Golden Gate. He then went around what we now know as Mission Bay, and saw Arroyo de los Dolores and Laguna de los Dolores, where they came back and put Mission Dolores there. The myth early on was that the ship from Spain arrived at the Golden Gate, all these people from Spain got off, and everybody in California is Spaniards. Well, not really. It's a pleasure for me to have spoken to you. I hope I can come back again.
It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.